my name is Lexi Jong, and here I like to talk about luxury makeup and makeup brushes. And today we are going to be taking a look at the newest offerings from REPHR. Now, before we go into detail on each of the new brushes, I just want to go over a few sales information for REPHR. REPHR has reopened the concept store as of yesterday, and they have a few brushes in there. Now, if you're unfamiliar with the concept store, what that is basically you are trying out the brushes for a discounted price, and in return for the discount, all you have to do after you've used the brushes, you've received them, you've had time to play with them, all you need to do is fill out some feedback for them. And they will send you an email. You just fill in what your thoughts are, whether you like them, whether you don't like them, any specifics. And this is a way for them to test out the brushes and make any changes. So they often take suggestions from consumers to kind of integrate into improving their brushes. So that's what the concept store is. And before we move on to the new brushes, which they very kindly sent to me, let's take a look at what else they have in the concept store. In the concept store, they have brush number 4. This is the angled cheek brush. This is a really nice brush. I think it works well. For me, I prefer like smaller brushes for contour and bronzer. So I can use this for that. It also works really well for blush. Typically though, I use this one specifically for either cream bronzer or contours or cream blushes. Now, one of my favorite products to use with this brush is actually the Burberry Essentials Glow palette. If you're familiar with that, let me show it to you real quickly. So there are 2 shades in this palette. This is the fair to light medium, and then there's a medium to dark shade. And both palettes have 1 cream contour shade, a powder version, 2 blushes, and 2 highlights. I love this palette. So what I like to do is I will use my finger to get the cream contour up, put a little bit right there on my cheek, and then I like to use this brush to kind of brush it out. So that's my favorite purpose for this particular brush. Now, this brush is typically $39, but in the concept store, it is $23. So that's a savings of 41%. So it's a very nice brush. Again, I'll also use this for cream blush quite often. So here's brush number 4, and I believe this is their best-selling cheek brush. Now, I do have full reviews of these brushes that are already in the concept store, so I'll leave those linked down below. So this is one item that's there, and the other item that is not new is the Core Eye Trio. The Core Eye Trio normally retails for $72, and it is in the concept store for $39. That's a savings of 46%. So we have brush number 1 here, and this one is sort of in between like a crease and soft shader. Mine has bloomed. I've used this, I've had this well over a year now. I've used it quite a bit. I like to use this with cream shadows as well. It's really great if you're doing like a cream shadow look. I will use this in the crease to kind of fluff it out, but then I will use more of the flattened part because you can see it's got an oval ferrule here. It's pinched. So I will use the flat part then to lay the color on my lid. So it's really a great kind of one and done brush, particularly with cream products. It works well with powders as well. And then brush number 2 is going to be this. Now, again, you can use this one. It doesn't have a lot of flex or give. This works well with any shimmery shades because it doesn't have a whole lot of flex and give to produce fallout. I like to use this one when I'm using shadows wet, but most of the time what I use this for is actually the lower lash line. If you're looking for, more color, if you're looking for a thinner line, it's a little too thick for that, but it works well on the mobile lid as well. And then brush number 3 is their best-selling pencil brush. I believe it's best-selling. So this is a nice size. You can see how much flex and give it has here. There's a little bit, but not too much. So there's enough that it doesn't feel harsh using it. It's not like pointy, but it's thin enough that you can get a nice shade under the eye. You can get a little bit in the inner corner. You could use it for a brow highlight. For me, I think it's a little pointy for a brow highlight. So if I do that, then I'd go in with my crease brush afterwards and kind of, feather that out a little bit. So all four of the brushes so far are undyed goat hair. And again, undyed goat hair can be used with powders or cream or liquid products. If you're using them with something wet, you definitely want to make sure that you clean your brushes right away, because when creams and liquids dry on the brushes, they kind of create like a casing for that brush fiber and it becomes brittle. So you could break it off on accident. So just something to note. That's in general for brush hairs. Now, undyed goat hair can be used with creams and liquids because it's sturdier and that's more unlikely to happen. So that is definitely a reason that I like to use these with creams and liquids particularly. Now, as I mentioned, REPHR kindly gifted these to me. I was actually quite surprised. I had seen, a few videos already up from some YouTubers who had these brushes, and then a couple of days later, they appeared on my doorstep. So thank you so much to REPHR. That was very nice of you. The brushes came in this plastic box. Now, I like to use these kind of as brush holders. I keep them on my vanity here, like see for example here. So I have these kind of all around, and I have my regular brush organization for my clean brushes that I haven't used yet. I've got a holder for brushes that I'm testing. I have a holder for brushes that I am using but I'm not ready to wash. So things like that. So I personally love to use these. These are heavy duty plastic, and they are great for traveling with brushes. So if you are traveling or you're planning to in the future, definitely hold on to this, because you can put your brushes in here and you have no worries of anything getting crushed in your suitcase. Now, before we go through each brush individually, I have a demo where I used each of these brushes to create this eye look. So I'm going to show you that first. And then we're going to go through each brush and some comparisons with other brushes from my collection. We are going to be using the Viseart Petit Four palette in Lilas. And this is the REPHR 27. And you can see that this crease brush, mine has already bloomed. I've been using it, but you can see that it comes kind of to a point here at the top. So it's going to make it a little bit easier to get into the direct crease. So with this brush, we're going into this shade here for the crease. So that shade is very light and soft. I kind of went all over with this one, just adding whatever's left on the brush here. And next I'm going to go into this pinker shade with just the tip, and I'm going to go in very lightly just with the tip so that I get this concentrated in the crease. So you can see that I'm using just the tip bristles, and the brush itself is barely touching my eye, so I'm able to concentrate that in there. Next up, I want to show you how the REPHR 28 performs. This is a soft shader style brush, and you can see that it's on the smaller side, and it doesn't have a whole lot of flex to it, which makes it really good for creams and shimmery products. So we're going to go into this lighter shade. I'm going to put this all over the lid dry on one eye, and then we're going to do the other eye wet so you can see the difference. So you can see that this brush is pretty small. I mean, I have a small head in general, small eyes, and you can see how well it fits so that you can direct the color exactly where you want it. All right, so there it is dry. And just note that I didn't get any fallout with this brush. If I used something a little fluffier, I would have a few little, pieces down there. So I'm just putting some of the Esom Pro mixing medium on the back of my hand and getting my brush in there. And I'm just kind of taking off any excess on the side of my hand. All right, get the pigment up and And again, no fallout with either eye. So this brush, it just works really well with any sort of shimmery or wet shades in general. Just gonna go over this eye with the wet brush to kind of even them out a bit. Next, I'm taking the REPHR 29 brush. You can see that's a very, very tiny little like liner brush, and I'm going to use this to line the upper lash line, do a little tiny baby wing. I'm going to use this shade here, and I'm going to get a little bit of the liquid that is on my hand still from before. Now you can see here, actually here you can see it better like this, that there's not a whole lot of flex or give with this. It's going to be a stiff brush, which is going to make it easier to line your eyes with, a little bit easier to do something like a wing, which is not my forte. So I'm going to start over here. Just need to get a little bit more liquid. So I'm wiping the brush off and kind of drying it a little bit. Now I'm going to just take that brush and just kind of extend that a little bit with no additional shadow. Okay, and next I'm going back in with the REPHR 27. I'm going to mix a little bit of these two shades together, just the tiniest bit of the shimmer here, more of the matte. And I'm going to just kind of buff this in the crease just to get a little bit more of a transition here. Next up, we're going to take a look at the brush 26, and you can see that this is a very large pencil brush, and you can see you've got, you know, a little bit of flex here. I'm going to use this for the inner corner and for the lower lash line. We're going to start off with the lower lash line in this shimmery shade, and I'm getting the portion that is dry, not the area I used with the wet brush. And you can see a little fallout on my cheek. That's from me using the little liner brush when it wasn't wet enough. So just something to note there. And then for the inner corner highlight, I'm going in with the Guerlain Meteorites Pearl Dust palette. I'm going to go into the pearly pink. Just got some on the brush there, and just going to add this in to the inner corner. So this is my final eye look up close. And I'll start with the REPHR 26, and you can see that this is a large pencil brush, and it is very soft and flexible, which allows it to apply a soft layer of shadow, for example, under the lash line, just to show you compared to REPHR's other brushes. So this one here is the 23. You can see that's a very small pencil brush there, and you can see that it's going to be thin, and it's a little bit sharper, a little bit pointier on the eye. It's going to be better for a finer line. Next up, we have the 03. And again, you can see that that's going to be smaller as well. It's shorter, it's smaller. It's going to be a little bit more precise still than this one. Both of these are going to feel a little bit firmer on the eye just because they are a little bit shorter, the fibers in general. So the angle and the size of it just makes it a little bit sharper, if that makes sense. Whereas this is going to be a little bit softer, but again, you're going to get a thicker line. So this is what I used on the lower lash line today, the inner corner. I think it performs really well for both of these purposes. Now, some brushes I wanted to compare it to. These two are the same. This is the 70G Pencil 1. Now, I have two of these. I just wanted to show you real quickly that they were manufactured in different batches. So, you know, they're slightly different. So this one here on my left, this one is a little bit pointier than this one. So this one's actually the newer one. So I just wanted to share that with you in case, you know, you have the newer versus the older one. The older one is a little bit less pointy, a little bit, you know, more diffuse than the newer version, but it's very, very slight. Now, in comparison, Let me just show you this. You can see how much more flexible the REPHR is, and it's got a larger head as well. Diameter is going to be about the same. Now, another brush that I thought of with this REPHR 26 is actually the Sonia G Crease 1. Now, this brush is technically a crease brush. You can see that it's larger than the REPHR 26, but you can see also that there's not a lot of flex or give with these bristles. It's comparable to the 26 in that sense. So although this is a little bit bigger, it has about the same amount of flex or give, the same feeling to it. Now, diameter and everything, it's going to be, the crease one's a little bit bigger all around, longer, and a slightly larger diameter as well. So if you already have this brush, just, you know, feel this. Again, it's a Sonia G Crease 1, and that'll give you an idea of what this one feels like. Now I just have a few more brushes to compare it to. This is the Chikuhodo T8 brush, and you can see that the fibers are a little bit longer with the T8. They do have a similar shape to them. However, even though this has a round ferrule, you can see that it's still kind of flattened on one side, whereas the REPHR 26 is completely round. The Chikuhodo handle is also going to be a lot shorter. So they have similarities, yet the REPHR 26 is more of an all-around gradation of the shorter to longer hairs, whereas this one is going to be has more of a flattened side, and the hairs are shorter on the front and the back here, but the sides are a little bit longer. If that makes sense. Next, we have the Chikuhodo F07. Again, this is going to have a shorter handle, but you can see here that the heads of these are going to be fairly similar. The F07 is a little bit more rounded, whereas the 26 is going to be a little bit more pointed. And last up, we have the KZ08. Now, this brush, you know, is going away. Fude Beauty just put out their updates. Check the community board for information on these brushes, but some of the brushes are coming back. So basically everything will be back for at least one more restock, and then we don't know what's happening. The series could be discontinued, or it may come back like intermittently, who knows. But if you're interested in them, check the community page, and that is where I am putting all updates that I receive. I have reached out to Visage to see if they are getting them as well, so we'll see what they say. Now, here is the KZ08, and again, you can see it's a similar shape, similar point to it as well. So I think these two are fairly comparable. The KZ08 is very, very slightly shorter than the REPHR 26. Now, one thing I do want to note with the REPHR 26 and the Sonia G's that I showed, those are all undyed Go hair, can be used with powders, creams, liquids, whereas these others like the KZ and the FO, they should be used with powders. Next, we have the REPHR 27. Now, my brush has bloomed. When you get it, you'll see a little bit more of an exaggerated point here, but this, you can see, is going to be a crease brush, and you can see the curvature here. It comes more to a point at the top. It's not, I mean, it does curve, but there's a little bit more of a sharp point at the top of this. Again, mine is dirty. Now, I first wanted to compare this to the other crease brushes that REPHR has in their line. So this one here is 14. I didn't include 13 since it's even smaller than this, but I wanted to show you, sorry, this is not a brush hair. That's just like a fuzz, but I wanted to show you that the shape here is going to be slightly different. So there's more of a point here with the 26 than there is with the 14. And you can see size-wise, obviously 14 is going to be shorter. The handle on the 26 is also shorter. These were the brushes that first came out, so just something to note. This was, you know, their very first batch of brushes when you pre-ordered when they started their company. So that's the 14. And here is the REPHR 15. So it actually has a little bit thicker of a diameter here by the ferrule. They both have round ferrules, but you can see that the 15 is going to have a rounder point compared to the 26, which again has more of a more of an angular point there. And just for reference, here is the 16, which is going to be bigger all around. Again, it's more rounded. You got bigger diameter, and the hairs are slightly longer as well. So next to the 14 over here and the 15 here, you can see that this brush kind of fills a void in the shape and size that they had there. And I think the angle point here kind of helps you use it for more of a targeted area as well. So here you can see the flex and give. The 26 has a little bit more flex in it than the 14 and 15 do. They're all great for working in the crease. Now, some other comparisons, we have the Crease Pro from Sonyeji. You can see that that's going to be much smaller overall. Again, it's going to be more rounded and it has a little bit less give here. This is the Classic Crease from Sonyeji. And again, we've got it's more of a flat top actually on this one versus the more triangular shape here. And the amount of flex and give is going to be slightly more still in the 26. Diameter here of the ferrules is actually very similar. And the last one I wanted to compare it to, this is the Sonyeji Crease 2. And you can see that the bristles here are a little bit shorter, but the fluffiness is a little bit more similar, even though the diameter of the ferrule is going to be a little bit bigger in the Sonyeji. And again, this one's going to be rounded. Just because these are slightly shorter than the 26, you can see the 26 has a little bit more flex. One last comparison, this is the Smith 247, and I just wanted to compare this because this one does have a pinch ferrule. It's a little bit different. You can use this more as a soft shader or you can use this in the crease. You can see flex wise, it's going to be pretty comparable, but the Smith does have shorter bristles. The one thing I wanted to note though is it does have a little bit more of a point on it at the tip. So this is another option there. Next up, we're going to take a look at the REPHR 28. This is a soft shader style brush, which is one of my favorite eye brush shapes. And this one here, we're going to first compare just to the REPHR's other offerings, and then we're going to compare it to my beloved soft shader from Sonyeji. First up, here is the REPHR 1. And this one you can see, as I mentioned, is kind of like a soft shader crease brush hybrid. So it's definitely going to be a lot fluffier than the 28 brush. And it's bigger all around. It does have a similar shape, although the 28 goes a little bit flatter at the top. It curves a little bit more on the edges. So REPHR 01, pretty different. This here is the REPHR 02. You can see it's going to be a bit wider and shorter than the 28. Again, both of them work very well for applying wet products, cream products to the lids as well as shimmers, but I actually prefer the 28 for it because I like the length of the bristles a little bit more. This one requires a little bit more work to cover the whole lid. All right, so next we're taking a look at the Sonyeji Soft Shader. This is my very favorite eyeshadow brush. I have 4 of them because I use it every day. And you can see here that it does have a very similar shape. The curvature is very similar. The soft shader is bigger all around, so it is going to be a bit wider and thicker. So you can see here that it's just slightly bigger all around, a little bit longer bristles and so forth. The handle is also going to be a little bit longer on the soft shader. I love both of these brushes. I have to say the Sonyeji Soft Shader is still number 1. This did not unthrone it, or dethrone it, but I really do like using this for liquid and cream shadows on the lids. It works really well with powder shimmers as well, but definitely is something great to use with cream products. This one is also, just keep in mind that this one is a little bit bigger. So if you're looking for something a little bit more precise, the 28 is a better option for that because again, it is a little bit thinner. So you don't have the issue if you're going by the crease of accidentally touching an area you don't want to, at least on eyes like mine. And yeah, so just something to note there. This one works a little bit better for painting on your eye, in my opinion, than the soft shader does. Love both of them. Next, we have the Chikuhodo T12 brush. And this one's actually more similar to the REPHR 02 in shape because again, we've got the shorter bristles here, but the thickness is going to be pretty comparable. The Chikuhodo T12 is actually very slightly thicker than the 28 brush. You can see that the width of the ferrules are similar. They are both going to be a pinch ferrule, and in general, the 28 is going to be essentially a longer version of the T12. And we also have the T7 here, and you can see that this one's going to be a little bit longer than the 28. It's also going to be a thicker ferrule, and this one is going to be a little bit fluffier in general, so it's going to be a little bit more comparable to the soft shader than the 28. And here we have the Chikuhodo F06, again, short handle, but you can see here that they both are going to be more of that soft shader style. The F06 has more of a point at the top, so it has a little bit sharper of a gradation over on the edges, and it's going to be a little bit more narrow. They both have a pinched ferrule here, although this one's actually more oval. It doesn't have as much of a crimp, if you understand what I'm saying there. So that's just something to note there. Amount of flex and give is going to be comparable between the two of these brushes. And this is the KZ07. So again, they're going to be pretty similar in bristle length. The KZ07 is very slightly longer. They do have a similar curvature, but the KZ07 is going to be thicker. So it is going to be a little bit of a fluffier brush. Again, this KZ07 cannot be used with liquids or creams. So this works really well with powders and shimmers because it doesn't have too much flex and give. Whereas the 28 you can use with any of the mediums. And yeah, here's flex and give for both of those. They're going to be similar, but the KZ07 is going to be, it has a little bit more flex and give. It's a little bit softer and fluffier. Now, next up, another shorter handle brush. This is the Surratt Moyenne or medium brush. This is the classic brush or classique. And you can see here, again, very similar shape and size here. The Surratt is going to be a little bit longer in hairs. The Surratt is also very slightly thicker than the REPHR, but it's very, very minimal. So these are going to be very similar in performance for powder, but again, this one can be used with liquids and creams. The flex and give on the Surratt is going to be a little bit more, just because again we got longer fibers, plus the hair type is different. Just a few more comparisons. This is the Smith 253. This has a longer handle, and this is the small arrowhead brush. So you can see that this one comes to a point, but I did want to share because they are kind of a similar length of bristles for the longest part here. And you can see that this one is going to have more flex and give than the REPHR here. Now, yeah, the width is going to be pretty comparable on these. Few more comparisons. We have the Esom. This is the W21. It's a sable hair brush. It's got a much longer handle. Again, the bristle length on these is going to be pretty comparable, but this one is going to be more of a rounded head compared to the 28. You can see here that the 28, you know, it's got a little bit more of a flatter top in comparison there. Flex and give, the REPHR 28 actually has a little bit more flex than the Esom does. And last up, we have the REPHR 29, and this is a tiny little pencil liner brush. I love brushes like this. I don't have too many brushes like this. My most similar brush, in my opinion, is actually going to be this Wayne Goss brush. So this is the Wayne Goss 07. It's technically a lip brush, and you can see that this one actually has curved edges. It has a flat top, but it's not quite as flat. This one's a little bit flatter there. And you can see that they are pretty similar. So this liner brush is intended for, you know, eyeliner and so forth, but another purpose for this is to use it as a lip brush, or, you know, use it for concealer around your lips. For example, if you are using a bright color like what I have on and you make a mistake, you know, you can use this as a lip brush as well. So just something to note there. It is pretty versatile brush, and the smaller sizes, in my opinion, make it a little bit easier to get a sharp line. So this Wayne Goss 07, this is one of my favorite brushes. I use this for lips and for liner, but it's just a fantastic brush. I think this is a great brush to have on hand as well. Just for some other comparisons, this is the Esom T05. You can see how much larger this is in general, but they're both flat top liner brushes. Now again, you can use this one with liquids, powders, and creams as well. I often use this, you know, around the lips and so forth also. So I don't just use it on the eyes. These two are essentially the same. These are both Esoms. We have the V09 and the T09. You can see that the T09 is going to be slightly more narrow, but they have the same shape. And just in comparison, here is the REPHR 29. So again, it's much shorter, flat top compared to these. Flex and Give is going to be comparable. These are all stiff brushes. And last up, the Sonia G Flat Definer. And you can see that they are very different brushes. This one's going to have a lot more Flex and Give. It's much larger overall, and it's more rounded than the REPHR 29. So overall, my thoughts on these brushes. I think these are a great addition to the REPHR line. I particularly find it a little difficult to get small liner brushes like this, so I really like this. I'm glad that they, you know, added this one in. I think it's a good size for people like me who are not very skilled with liner, and I really love it for touching up around the lips. So I think it's a really nice brush. If you're doing like something really angled at the eye and you need to use a little concealer on the edges and so forth to kind of crisp that up, this is a great brush for that because it's small enough that you can really target that area and, you know, you're not accidentally getting any like concealer or powder or anything where you don't want it. The REPHR 27 I think is a great crease brush to add to the line. I think the little more angled point at the top, you know, does help target it, makes it versatile. This would be a great crease brush to travel with because you can kind of use it in multiple ways. So I think this is, you know, a really nice brush to include in the collection. Brush 28, I really love soft shader cell brushes. I'm very glad to have this in my collection, and I think that it works well with shimmers and creams and liquids, which is my purpose for it. So I think it's a great brush. I like the smaller size of it, and I wouldn't be mad if they made a slightly bigger version also. So I think this particular, you know, kind of the width of this and how thin the amount of flex and everything makes it really easy to work with liquids and get them targeted where I would like them. And a slightly bigger version would be a great sister to this. And the REPHR 26, I really love this pencil brush. You know, it's a great one for using on the lower lash line. I have a hard time sometimes finding a brush that I really love for the lower lash line that is, you know, the right size, you know, because I want something that is large enough that it's still soft and produces like enough color that you can see it there, but I want it to have a point on it. So this really accomplishes both of those things, and it works really well in the inner corner also. So overall, I would have to say that I think this brush set is a great deal at 40% off. So it's approximately 41% off. This brush set will retail for $88 US dollars. But right now in the concept store, it's $52. So at $52, I would say it is worth picking up if you have a need for these brushes in your collection. If you already have brushes that are similar or they don't really fit your aesthetic, obviously it's not going to be a must-have for you. But I do think that these are very versatile. And one of the things I really like about REPHR brushes in general is the fact that I can use them with creams and liquids. And honestly, I have so many brushes with other fibers that I can't use with creams and liquids that I pretty much use my REPHR brushes mostly for creams and liquids. Aside from the crease brushes, I use those with powders all the time, but you know, in general, that's kind of my main purpose for them. And that's what I really like to have on hand for them. I also think they will be great travel brushes when I eventually travel again. And this is a really nice set to kind of bring with you for versatility. So that's my opinion on this brush set. Again, if you are a huge brush collector and you already have tons of brushes, do you need these? Most likely not. If you are a beginner and you're just starting a collection, this is something nice to add to it. If you're looking for brushes that you can travel with or brushes exclusively for creams and liquids, I think this is a great set for that as well. So I think it all depends on your purposes as to whether this is going to be something that you want to include in your collection or not. But if you are interested, be sure to take a look at the concept store and take advantage of the discount that they have. Now, again, I just want to say a quick thank you to REPHR for sending me these brushes. I do have an affiliated link for them down below in the description box. And if you enjoyed this video, please give me a thumbs up. Consider subscribing if you haven't already, and I will see you very soon. Have a great day. Stay safe and healthy.